Hi, my name is Joe Ferrari from the Psychology Department at DePaul University in Chicago. I've been a professor here since 1994, and since 1995, I have been the editor of the Journal of Prevention and Intervention in the Community. I co-founded the PhD program in Community Psych. I teach primarily undergraduate classes. I teach introductory and social psych and community psychology. But I have supervised quite a few master's level and PhD students. My research interest these days focuses on psychological home, the meaning of home. How does that ground us? And the sense of spirituality as it involves in community action. What directs us? What gives us that purpose, that meaning in life? But other areas of my work have focused on areas such as social personality research on perfectionism, procrastination, self-handicapping tendencies. In the area of applied social and community psych, I've looked at caregiver stress and satisfaction. I've looked at addictions recovery homes, a concept called Oxford House. I've looked at issues about community service and volunteerism. But I'm delighted you clicked on this site to learn more about us here at DePaul. The issue of values is an important issue. It grounds us in terms of who we are as individuals, but it's virtues that are more important in some ways than values. The values are what we believe, what we hold. Virtues are those habits of the heart, if you would, how we take those values and we move them into action. So in terms of values, I value things like loyalty, importance. I value compassion and passion. And I see those, let's take those last two, passion and compassion. I see those as action points because what drives you to want to serve other people? Why do you want to be a community psychologist? I tell students, what's the legacy you're going to leave? Because we're only on this earth for 70, 80 years maybe. But how are we making a difference? How is the world going to be better? So it's not only the value, it's the virtue. It's how do I show the passion and how do I show compassion from that? Common passion. Goals. Goals kind of change, given that sometimes they change, given on the moment. But there are certain kinds of initiatives that I've started for graduate students that I'd like to see actualized further. I can think of three. One program we've created that I was asked by APA to develop for DePaul was PFF. It stands for Preparing Future Faculty. And DePaul University in the city of Chicago is the only institution with doctoral programs that was selected by the APA for that. Sure, we prepare students how to be researchers and sometimes the teaching. But what about service, that third leg of a faculty life? We don't do enough research on that, and DePaul has partnerships with 2- and 4-year colleges in and around Chicago where students are placed in those sites to work with Psi Chi, the honor societies, to help them advise on mentoring of students for careers, for a thesis. So PFF is one of my goals. Another goal that I have that's really taken off and I really want to see it go further is a program called DUOs. DUOs stands for Doctoral Undergraduate Opportunities for Scholarship. It's a program where the doctoral student is matched up with an undergraduate, faculty member is only there on paper, and it's the graduate student who mentors the undergraduate on original research. They are expected to present that at a conference. In fact, that's what the DUOs funding goes for, is to pay for their air flight and conference fees. But both the student, the graduate student, and the undergraduate partner together on this research. The third area is really exciting and I think unique to DePaul, is what we call GGE, Global Growth Experience. In students' third year, all right, we encourage them, maybe fourth year, but usually third year, we encourage them to go overseas for 10 weeks, for 20 weeks. We don't want to make you a tourist, we want to make you a pilgrim in a new land. And so you study overseas, you do research overseas, you live overseas. The faculty have connections in countries like Ireland, Peru, Philippines, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Kenya. And so with our connections, we're able to place you in another site, another place where you can collect research, maybe study, but live with the people, truly become a global citizen. And I guess one of my goals is to see that really develop, that we have too many students and not enough sites. TAs, teaching assistantships, it also depends on where they are in their career. I would say the first year, the first time, if this is something new, it's purely proctoring of exams, grading those exams. I don't really have lots, well, I should take that back. I was going to say I don't have lots of papers. It depends on the course. When we're talking about my undergraduate course in social psych or intro psych, it's proctoring and grading exams, part multiple choice, part short answer essays. When it comes to something like community psychology, my undergraduate community, lots of hands-on projects, from let's learn about diversity in Walmart to how much safety is there in a forest preserve or a park. So students go off and do lots of hands-on projects and then come back and write little one-page, two-page max, reflection papers, and the graduate students read those. I have to say that the graduate students report they really like these exercises, and they're blown away by the answers. As far as the proctoring of exams for the introductory psych course or social psych, I've not heard anybody complain. Sometimes they say it's easier than some other assignments they could have, because it's basically, you need to be there. I tell you well in advance what those dates are. For a GA, that's different. That's a graduate assistantship for research. And I expect them, it depends. If there's somebody in community psychology in my field, I'm going to mentor that person a little differently than someone who may be IO, industrial organizational, who just happens to be assigned to me. Then they're going to be just helping data collection. But a lot of my TAs work a lot with the undergrads in my team. We have a mixed team. They proctor their projects. We do a lot of conference presentations. So they really help supervise them and work with them, data analysis, putting together posters, typically posters for the undergrads. As the payback, I encourage, and they've always done this, the undergrads to put the graduate student as a co-author. Always put me last. I don't need any of these on my career anymore for my CV. But anyway, they supervise and they mentor them. And then in our research team meetings, they discuss how it's been going. So it's a partnership. So for me, I guess you'd say one of the successes would be whether the students, as a TA, eventually becomes the instructor of record. Those individuals, I find a great pride, and hearing from others how great they are, from colleagues, from students, how great they are as an instructor. In terms of GA, graduate assistants, I find successful, I've had them from outside of community psych. I find if they go off and use some of the techniques that they learned, I'm big on individual differences, personality variables. And so do they throw those in, I like to say, in their dissertations or their theses and start looking at some comparisons. That's a success if I'm getting them to make a difference. Mentoring is different than advising. Academic advising is sitting down for coursework. Mentoring is a partnership. It's two people journeying together. And so it also depends on the undergraduate level. My expectations, how I mentor is a little different than what I would do for a master's or the doctoral students. So let's just focus for the moment on the graduate level. On the graduate level, it's two people walking together. As the faculty member, it isn't the student behind me, but the student next to me. The student works with me, not for me. I'm not a boss. It's one-on-one names. But I do happen to have more experience. So you're looking for the sage and the facilitator, someone who can give that guidance. But it is guidance. I can't do it for the student. So in my mentoring, we will meet. I will talk with what the project is. It often starts, as very common in graduate school, with something that I'm doing in my lab, and then from that, something they may want to do. But I have had people for their dissertations do something totally different. They told me in the beginning, this is where my heart is. This is my passion. And I say, great, but let's work on this first. They've built up that trust, that confidence, that I know that they can do this alone. And then when it comes time for the doctoral dissertation, if they still want to work with me, they go off and do something completely different. So it's a partnership together. I don't know how else to describe this. It's a journey together for that quest for knowledge. So I've mentored quite a few people. So on the master's level, many of them have gone on to doctoral programs. And we really take a pride in the psych department because we take very few people for this program, 6 to 8 out of maybe 50 to 80 applicants. So unlike a lot of master's programs where they just take a lot of people, we're very selective since they take doctoral courses. But let me answer more your question. I'm getting off the issue. In terms of doctoral students, one of the first students to come through the doctoral program in community psych is now an assistant professor of a psychology department in a psychology department that has a community program. This individual started that program. Another student, also one of the early graduates of the program, told me from the beginning, I don't want to be a faculty member, but I like the academic life. I want to do something where I can use that because I really want to do the community angle. And so what this person has done is wound up at a community college, then at a small liberal arts college, and now at another college after several years. He's just not just hopping around. But he's the director of assessment for the institutions, program evaluation within higher education. Very cool. Another student was an experimental student from the experimental psychology program, was more of a cognitive student, cognitive psych. And since I wear both hats, I'm kind of trained both ways. This person has now working in marketing, is survey marketing for a business company. So on the doctoral level, a variety of those things. In the master's level, a number of my students who worked with me have gone on to PhD programs or have realized this is as far as I want and have gotten jobs. Some of them haven't. Some of them I thought were excellent, couldn't have just blown away any PhD program, and then simply said, no, I've had enough, this is all I want to do. That's not a failure. The person has now made an informed decision on their life. And what else can you ask for? Well, I'm going to give you an answer to that question. It's an old answer. Think of a thesis. Well, think of a thesis and a dissertation as trying to do that quest for knowledge on this journey to try to understand things. And the thesis is often considered a way of moving a rock out of that quest on that path as you're journeying, a tree, cutting down some branches. So there's an existing path in the quest for knowledge, and you're just clearing it and making it more understandable. A dissertation, on the other hand, is a major path. You're cutting us into a path of that forest of knowledge that we haven't gone before. So that's how I view them, if you can understand what I'm saying here. One is adding to the existing knowledge. It's not necessarily something brand new. You're just tweaking. You're just expanding something, maybe a new measure, maybe saying, let's look at this variable, let's look at this particular group. A dissertation should be a dissertation, something more major, truly taking us into a new path for knowledge, someplace we haven't gone before. My lab. Well, now it's been like this for quite a while. I'm not sure while you're watching this if we're still doing this, but it was always every other Wednesday from 2:30 to 4. So a lot of my colleagues will have weekly lab meetings of maybe an hour. I found, primarily through my undergrads who are part of the team, that that was too much to commit. But they could, once they come, stay longer. So we do every other week, 2:30 to 4. It's been like that for quite a while. People coming into my lab need to know that if you're going to work in my lab, 2:30 to 4, every other Wednesday, that's your time. Now it's interesting, I've noticed that the weeks we don't meet on Wednesdays at 2:30, the members of the team will meet separately to discuss because everybody just books in Wednesdays at that time. And that works really nice. It's usually a treat. I usually try to bring cookies or something for them to eat because if you feed them, they come. We go around talking about how's the research project. I guess I'd have to think about it by quarters. We're on the quarter system. In the fall, we're preparing submissions for conferences that we will do later in the year. So it's all about how's the data going, what do we have, how can you create a poster or a paper presentation. In the winter, it's the analysis and presenting to the team. Okay, let's hear this time how your poster went and how it went. In the spring, most of the conferences we go to are in the spring. In the spring, it's now, let's see how that poster or how that paper presentation is so you can practice it. And then by the end of that spring, we usually shut down for the summer. So it depends. which quarter you're talking about. But I really like that cycle. It works really well. The fall preparing, the graduate students helping the undergrads prepare, and graduate students preparing themselves. Winter working on pulling together that and practicing it, doing it, pulling together what the analysis should be. And then in the spring, actually presenting and going to conferences. That's an interesting question you ask, because so much of what goes on in my lab, although I have a couple of lines, often 2 or 3 lines of research, the students can package it themselves the way they'd like to go, and in other directions. So as I said, to an earlier question, they may start off doing things that I like, but over time, as we begin to partner and I begin to see their skills, and they develop their skills as well, they may go do something that they want, but still be part of my lab. I'm basically a quant guy. I'm not an expert on statistics. I'm more of research methods. In my graduate training, that was more of what I learned. And statistics has changed so much since I've gotten my doctorate. So I'm still more of a quant. Some people do qualitative work, and that's not forbidden, because often while we may have some scales, some reliable and valid measures that we use, we have open-ended questions we include. And I have had people doing their thesis, taking a chunk of that data and saying, I want to compare this group with that group. But they're often large data sets. They might have 400 people who wrote an answer, even though we might have had 1,200 respondents, 300 or 400 filled in. So they take some chunk of that, as opposed to this typical qualitative that might only be 3 people, 5 people, 8 people. No, my qualitative is going to be still a little more larger than that. Mixed methods, I guess, is another way of explaining that.